Yay! It's so good to have you here, Miriam.
Thank you. I love being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out and chatting with me.
I know. It's such a blessing this whole time here with all our friends and everything. And I'm honored actually to just be a part of such a beautiful group of women,
I know.
you know?
How old were you? You're on that back.
25.
You're 25.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking. I was like, I would love to see 19-year-old me and 25-year-old you. Like if we could go back and be like, just so you know, in another 20,
Something years.
24 years.
Wow. That long.
Right? Because it was 2000.
Yeah, 2000 to 2001.
Yeah. So if someone was like, in 24 years, you guys are going to sit down and have a chat and you can see how different your lives are and what the Lord's done in you and us be peers. I feel like back then you were like old and mature and I was like a high schooler.
Maybe.
Ish.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I was one of the old ones. It was me and another 27-year-old. Well, there was one more 25-year-old. So, and then everyone else was just like fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
But as far as life experience goes, I didn't feel like that I was that much more mature, you know? Like I had still been living with my parents and off gallivanting and things like that. So it was kind of still, I felt like I could relate. It wasn't like I was like outside of the whole.
And did you have experiences with Soul Sister, like woman sessions prior? Or
No, no, nothing like that. So like I graduated high school, did a mission trip to India, came home, did my nursing. And then after that, I did work with like disabled adults and stuff like that. But then I ended up on net because I was kind of in a searching place in my life, you know, like what does God want? And I felt like marriage was something I wanted, but at the same time, I was open to religious life. And so I was always just questioning what comes next, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what got me there.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I had never experienced anything like net, like the fellowship, the women's sessions. I don't think I had, like my best friend was a girl, but I don't know, we weren't girly girls. Like I feel like we mainly hung out with all the guys.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my relationships were like that. And so I struggled with men's and women's in the beginning, but I like by the end of my second year, like I was like, this is the greatest gift. Like these female relationships are amazing and beautiful.
And the importance, the healing that comes in them, right?
Yeah.
Like men can't teach women how to be women. Only women can help us become our full selves, right? So in those sessions and just kind of being blown away by just our feminine dignity simply by being with other women, you know, it was very powerful.
Yeah.
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 So
such a gift.
Really.
And I think I only saw what I was missing. Like I remember one time we were meeting as women and the guys were out playing like football or soccer. And I was like, this is so dumb. Why are we sitting here sharing our hearts when they're playing? That looks like so much more fun. I don't want to sit here and just talk and, you know?
Yes, I agree. Growing up with two older brothers, I always felt like they were having more fun than I was. And I was just being too girly, you know? In some ways, like they weren't mean or anything to me, but because I held older brothers and I was sort of looking to them, like, who am I in a way as a child? I kind of always felt like a screwed up girl, like, you know, in some ways, because, and also some embarrassment about being a girl. And so, but through net, there was very profound healing in all of those things. As a woman, being honored as a woman and learning how to receive that as a woman.
That was huge.
It's huge. It's like, I can open the door, you know? And then, no, let me carry that. And I was just like, oh, this is beautiful and good, you know?
Yeah, it's affirming for them and us. It's
Yeah.
not because I'm less than, it's because I'm different.
Exactly. In a beautiful way.
In a really beautiful way, yeah. And letting our feminine strengths, letting their masculine strengths complement our feminine strengths. I'm so grateful of that time and that we learned that at such young ages.
Very much so. I often look back at my net time and I thank God and I say I am eternally grateful for those years because it's made an eternal change in my soul forever. Like there was internal growth that happened in leaps and bounds because of the situations that you're placed in. Like you can do it, other life experiences bring you through, but there's an intensity to it because of just the lifestyle of net and being so intensely close. It was like almost pushing a fast forward button.
It is. Yeah. I think that the growth, like my dad said, he's like, I don't know what's happened to you, but you've grown more in the last 3 months than you have in the last 4 years.
Absolutely.
And I see it with university students. When we were in Austria, I saw the college students like go from being kids to adults. And there's this growth. And I think it's being put in an environment where there's intentional community and then stretching you. So like Franciscan makes everybody leave for a weekend. They're not allowed to stay. Like, because most weekends students travel, but some are like, no, I need to stay where it's safe. And there's one weekend where they make them all go. And like you see the whole group dynamic shift afterwards. And it's like they had to travel Europe all by themselves or with a friend or two, but it's like this good being pushed out. And yeah, I think combination of having that time of formation and then also having that and then staying with people in extreme, like seeing such like staying with the poorest of the poor, giving you their like master bedroom. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like this is, and they're sleeping on the floor or the couch. So I can have their room. Like it's so humbling. And then being in big, beautiful mansions as well. I mean, there was less of those, but like seeing the extreme, right? And seeing the beauty of each and every person, like not just on my team, but those that were serving as well. Yeah, it was, totally changed my life.
Absolutely. When you mentioned the poorest of the poor, when I was doing my mission trip in India, and I got to work with Mother Teresa and her sisters, and as well, I got to visit villages. And just like that, here I was, this man, old man, humpback. They had one wicker bed, a huge hole in it, but it was the most comfortable spot, or the dirt floor. And they were going to give me his bed and make this man sleep on the floor. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I realized like, oh, there's no other place for him. Because you want to honor their gift.
Yes, but
at the same time, you
like,
can't.
I'm okay on the floor.
Yeah,
thank you.
no, let me. And they were like, oh, and then they were so grateful that I had offered that, but sometimes we're so unaware of our surroundings, right? And but I was like, thank you, Lord, for letting me see that, because that would have been awful, right?
Yeah.
This poor man had to sleep on the floor.
And then also from the North American mindset, and you're like, this is the worst sleeping condition, like in your house, right? You're like, this would have been the worst thing. But for them, it's like the very best.
It really is the very best. And they give you the very best. And it was just like humbling. And like in my own heart, I realized the lack of generosity that I have in sharing what I have, and I'm like, wow, I hoard, instead of give. And so it was very amazing.
Yeah. I remember you being just such a generous person back then. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah. And I remember like you just being so nice and kind to everyone, and it didn't matter. Like I struggled with relationship. Like I had a certain type of personality that I could hang out with. And I'm like, these are my people. These are not my people. And you didn't have that. Like everybody was your people. And I felt loved by you. Like it was easy to be friends with you. Like you were my type of people in the aspect that like we just naturally, I think, got along. But I struggled with certain relationships. And I'm like, how is she nice to them? How is she? And like you didn't try. You were just so comfortable in you and so generous. Like I always try to sit by the people I wanted to sit by and interact with the people I was comfortable with. And I think also being American, being in Canada, like I was like, Canadians are weird. Like I had never left the US. Or no, I take that back. I went to Rome, but I went with a bunch of Americans. And just my comfort zone was just so different. Like I remember like going for a walk and being, and saying like, I'm like, why aren't there streetlights? Why are these roads dark? Like I just was raised in suburbia. So like I just didn't know better. But I definitely saw that in you. And I love that like that was part of what shaped you. And you also have been learning detachment more recently with your living situation.
Yes, very much so. Living in an RV. selling a beautiful home and just deciding that like the Lord was calling us to something deeper. And we felt it was possibly moving to the US, but it was more than just the home that we were living in. It was more the relationship with my husband and I and our children, and really wanting to embrace that. Through COVID and like 2000, 2001, my brother, I have two older brothers, but one, he passed away in 2020 of ALS. And then in August, my father-in-law of 21, he passed away. And he had worked very hard his whole life and provided beautiful things for his family. But Michael and I were looking at each other and looking at this beautiful home. And I mean, having it was stretching us financially. And we were asking ourselves, is this what we want to look back on our life and say, like, look how hard we worked? We kept a house.
Yeah.
And having to struggle and not having time and always working and always like cleaning this thing because it was so big, you know? Is that what we want to leave for our children, or is there more? And so in that, we stopped and said, no, there's more. And scared as anything, we said, let's do it, you know? And not always feeling like supported, feeling like people are like, you guys are nuts,
crazy,
you know? And like, this is not a financially sound decision, you know? Because there is truth in that, like, you increase the value of your home and all that. But we were like, no, we're thinking more long-term, like eternal terms, you know? And so we have to let this go. And in that experience, like, we put a whole bunch of stuff in storage and we've just gone to access it. And we're like, wow, how much junk we kept thinking it was important. But through the letting go and being without it, you see how unimportant it is. And not everybody gets an experience like that, right? To really get to let go. Like, we often have to work so hard to learn how. But when you kind of force again, another forced experience of growth, well, this was definitely one. And I think it's done beautiful, beautiful things for our family. And with every good thing, there are some hard things, you know, like you can see the suffering in the kids and like they're missing their friends. And my worry that like our sort of RV life going place to place isn't giving them a sense of stability, and having to trust that I'm their stability.
You are, yeah.
You know, but having to believe that I can be that for them, you know, and feeling like I want other people in their life to give them what I can't. But those other people, like that other person is Jesus, right? He can.
Yeah.
And trusting them to him, you know, but really doing that in a way where I've actually let go, not just intellectually, but emotionally. That's its own thing to unpack for the rest of my life, you know, and watching them grow and hoping that the experience of them being in comfort and then discomfort that will come with them as adults, and they can say, no, I can live simple. I don't need the big stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with it, but that's not what I have to do.
Not
with
putting
my
your
life.
faith in the stuff.
Yeah.
Not saying like, this is who we are. We have all of this. And I feel like the Lord, like, it's funny. I'm like, okay, when we moved to Ireland from Houston, we brought 2 suitcases. From Ireland to Canada, we brought 4 suitcases. From Canada to California, we brought a car full. So like every time we brought a little more, but like downsizing and like this recent move, like we brought whatever Matt could fit in the truck, but I'm not even the one packing. So I feel like the Lord's calling me, and I'm like, Lord, why didn't I? Like, I feel like I learned a lesson every time and I grew, but then maybe I got attached to things again, and I'm letting go and like choosing to be like, all right, Lord, like I surrender it. And then I feel like as soon as I do that, something happens. So like my sister-in-law is living at our house, and she got rid of most of the kids' stuffed animals. Not a big deal. At one point I was like, oh, Max, I have a stuffed animal that my godmother gave me when I was 2. And then that stuffed animal my mom had for a long time, and I wanted it, and she wouldn't give it to me because she said it was hers. I'm like, it was my birthday present. And she's like, you're going to lose it. You guys move too much. You'll lose it. And I took it one day from the house, and she found out like a month later and was like, you're gonna lose it. Like, it's safer here. Like, I can keep everything. Like, my mom has a beautiful house. She's an interior decorator. Everything's in its place. And I've always been more messy and stuff all over the place. She's like, you'll lose it. So the first thing in my head, I texted my sister-in-law and I was like, I don't know if you happen to see a dog that's like very beat up, very worn out. And it used to be fluffy, but it's not anymore. I'm like, I got it when I was 2. If you got rid of it, it's totally fine. But if you happen to know where it is, I would like it. And just surrendering it. But then the lies coming back in my head and hearing my mom's voice again. Like, you're gonna lose it. It's safer in my house. My godmother died of cancer, and like, this was one of the things we had to remember her by. And I know it's silly, but like I remember being like in high school, and then even after net, coming home and not having those relationships that like I loved, and missing those people, and like bawling, and this stuffed animal held my tears. Like, it's so much more than a stuffed animal. Yes. And my 12-year-old's really attached to it too. And she was the one that remembered. And I was like, of course she would remember, and I forgot. And but trying to surrender it and let it go. And then my sister-in-law saved it. So I don't have it, but she has it. So it's at the house still. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Or all of our Christmas stuff got lost. And like, I bought ornaments at different times, and then just like choosing to let go of it. And then my sister-in-law sends me a picture of books, and we like wrap books, right? And open them every day through Advent. And one of them was a book from when I was a child. And she's like, do you want any of these? I'm like, oh, yes, please. Like, oh, I at least have the books. And so I feel like the Lord's giving me little gifts that I've like tried, but it's only once I'm really detached. I'm like, it's okay. I don't need it. That it's like, oh, you also have this, you know?
Yeah, he's generous, right? He gives back. And in those things, there's memories attached, right? And in that is good, you know? And to hold on to those things is such a blessing. But as I come and like, I'm opening these boxes. So my husband went up to Canada and packed a trailer, and he wanting to provide, right? Trying to get all the right stuff, and me having to sort of reassure him, whatever you get will be great. You know, we just want a couch to sit on and beds to sleep in. And like, the rest we can let go. We've lived without, you
right.
know?
And
but
for how long did you live without it for?
20 months.
Okay, yeah.
So not like years and years,
no,
but
enough.
long enough that when we were sitting down, so what are we going to bring? We were both like, I don't remember what we have.
That was us as well.
You know, it's like, what is actually in there, you know? So I was like, just think furniture. That's what we want. We want like couches to sit on, beds to sleep in, mattresses, you know, but actually we brought more than we need in our trailer.
Yeah.
So we'll be fine, you know? And he's like, okay, you know, but he's opening boxes, and he's like, says, I want to be super dad. So he's bringing the stuffies and this and that and trying to make something, you know? So we're opening things, and as I open them, I'm having this similar experience of, oh yes, and oh yeah. And one box I opened, it's my childhood nativity set. Aww. And it's beautiful, and it's from Germany, and it's just gorgeous. But like, all of these memories, like from my childhood, came back. That we have a bench. It's actually was my grandmother's bench, and they brought it from Germany to Canada. Wow. And then it ended up at our cottage. So I have so many memories of like my family sitting around this. And then I'm sitting at the table, and my family sitting around it. And my brother who had passed, you can crawl into this cubby hole, and it says Christian. He'd written his name. And then my kids were in that cubby hole, and I was like, can you see your uncle's name? You know, there's just so much beauty attached to those things. So it's this interesting balance of like letting go, but it's okay, you know, like to keep as well. But God in his generosity, you know, allows us to have the things that bring back the important memories.
Yeah.
Like your godmother,
you
know, and my family, and the history of my brother. And
yeah, what a gift. And like, that's what matters.
It does, yes.
And having like, I feel like it gives you a whole new perspective by being able to step back and have the time where you're like, okay, we live in a space this big. And do you found that like your family got more close-knit being in a smaller footprint, living in the RV?
Yes. In some ways, yes. And in other ways, it was like, give me space, you know? And like, so my oldest daughter, she's 12, and she's just growing and maturing. And so there's this time in her life now where she's slowly becoming more independent and pulling away and allowing that. But how does she do that when she shares a room with her siblings, you know? So finding ways, creative ways to give her the space she wanted, like a curtain above her bed, you know, or different things like that to give her what she needed. But at the same time, there is no choice. You're in each other's space.
Yeah.
Learning how to share, you know, learning how in very intimate ways, you know, privacy, these things that it's just on fast forward again because of the intensity of the situation that you're living in, you know?
Yeah.
So I will always be grateful for our time in the trailer. It was definitely like we are renting now, and it was time for it to end. But in that, there's so much richness from it to unpack. I don't know if you found like you have your intense net year, you go home, and it's almost like in the unpacking of
Yes.
it that deeper conversion comes, you know, as we take it with us. It's like you're in the intensity of it in the moment, but then how does it shape you and change you in what we want to call ordinary life,
Right.
you know? And I kind of see that with our kids and the way they're relating. And even they've become less attached to things, you know? My husband brought like this bin with toys, and they didn't open it for days.
Wow.
Instead of like, oh, they're here and pulling it out, they were like, okay, thanks. And it's like, wow, they've become detached from stuff, you know?
What a gift.
Yes, a real gift.
I feel like that even from us living in Austria. Like we went to a tiny, like it was a townhouse, but it was so much smaller. The footprint was so much smaller than our house as well. And we wanted that. Like, so when we knew that we had to move, we're like, okay, what do we want? And it was like, okay, your body does better near a beach. Let's be near a beach and smaller. This, like our massive house in Steubenville is beautiful and amazing. And I loved restoring it. Like it's from early 1900s, but it was exhausting too. I'm like, I can't take this on anymore. Like it's too many big projects, too many things to clean. And I just always felt behind and like I was failing in it. And it was beautiful, but I'm like, I want something much smaller, much more simple. Like I want to be able, like there was a freedom in this tiny townhouse that we spent most of the time outside. And it was like, if I took 5 minutes, I could clean the whole downstairs of my house, which before I couldn't clean one countertop in 5 minutes.
Yes, I totally agree. And there's such freedom when this small space, because our home before we left it, it was big, it was beautiful, 6 bedrooms, but it took all my time. And so then you get into this smaller space and you're like, this is it, you know, this is where we can be a family, you know, and we can really be happy in this. And I totally agree. I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
In that smaller spaces. And like I felt like I was losing my children in our home. I'd be like, where are they all the time?
Yeah.
And they were younger, right? So you're just like, I need to know where you are, you know? But here it's just a simple, hey, and you can hear
And I
each other
found the
walking
kids
down the
loved
hall.
it and they longed for it. So like oftentimes we'd light the fire at night in this tiny living room and we'd light candles and everybody would come and we'd all sit there and be with each other. We're in a larger house, we're all spread out. Or the house that we just bought came with furniture. There was a TV in every single room. The first thing Matt did was go around and unplug them all. And it was like, we don't want to become these people. Like we know it's too easy to be, even this place that we're in right now, like every room has a TV. Have you turned it on? I don't think anyone.
Nobody's
we have
turned on a television.
A dozen women here and nobody's turned it on.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, I turned it on to see if I could put a screensaver on to make it look like a photo. So I did do that because I wanted it to maybe be in the background because I was like, this may be a good shot if I could turn it into a picture instead of a screen. But
yeah. I know. Technology, that's a big fight of trying to keep it balanced with kids. And that I would say would be one of my biggest crosses as a mom is trying to figure out that balance, because there are moments when it's so much easier to just let them stay on it, right? Because you can get all these things done, but it is not good, you know? So Michael and I are always reassessing. How do we get rid of this? How do we put this? How do, you know?
And are you and him kind of on the same page,
We
or you're
totally
figuring
are.
it out as you go? Yeah.
That's one thing I'm grateful for. As we have our differences, but when it comes to kind of family vision, we're on the same page. Like there's very rarely a disagreement in that. He's always like, yeah, no, that let's do that, you know, or he says something, I'm like, yeah, that's good, you know. So I'm thankful for that, because I watch other marriages and they're good with the struggle of figuring things out. I'm like, I don't know if I'd survive. I need peace. You know, I'm not a fighter all the time, but some can.
And we're both big fighters, so we fight a lot.
Do you? But it's
like when it comes to like the major issue, like salvation issues, we're always on the same page. But it's like littler things that we're trying to figure out, where like we'll go head to head. But once we realize, oh no, you're right. Like, yeah. So sometimes it's Matt, sometimes it's me who's right. But like we both want to get to the truth, and we want to get to what's best for the kids, and we eventually do. But we just have to find it out. I think it's more the choleric.
Maybe. I think we probably avoid more than dive in. And when I see the fighting choleric, I always think, at least there's a resolution. I often worry that it's more of a lukewarm instead of being one side or the other. You know, like there's something good in that. And I remember growing up, and there was a family, and they would fight and say things to each other, and then they'd be hugging and saying they're sorry. And it was shocking, but I was also very intrigued because I found that there was an authenticity in it. That, like, I wouldn't say my family wasn't authentic, but we're definitely avoiders, you know? So I think there was more of a loneliness in that, where this family, it wasn't there. That wasn't their struggle, you know?
It's interesting how we have different struggles. I remember talking to a friend at Mass. I'm like, she had like 10 kids, and they all sat still, and they all stayed in the pews, and they all said the prayers. I'm like, how do you do it? I'm like, I wish I could do that. Like, I can't do that. And she's like, we have different struggles. She's like, look at my husband. He's talking, having conversation, nodding. She's like, look at your husband. Matt's telling a story, and his arms are all big. And she's like, look at you and me. She's like, I struggle to get the books out of my kids' hands and them off the couch. And it's like, go outside. And she's like, you can't keep them in the pew. But then your kids are always off playing. You don't need to tell them they need to go play. They need, and it's just like, we just have different crosses. And I feel like it gave me a freedom that I was like, okay. And and a few times at church, I felt like all the eyes were on me, and my kids were just wild and crazy. And every now and again, I would catch her eye, either sitting behind me or in front of me, and just smiling. And I was like, there's no judgment. We're just different, you know? And it just like gave me permission to be like, it's okay that they can't sit still. Like, cause I tried to force them for so long, and it's like, no, that's just not like, yeah, we learn how to be respectful, but like different families have different things that we need to work on, you know?
I totally agree. With my kids, same thing. My little guy, I have girl, boy, girl. He was so active, and it came out even stronger in Mass all the time. He was an altar crasher. He wanted up at the front, you know? And I remember having to like get around and get him out of the pulpit. Like he was hiding inside, and people were pointing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, having to get him out and stuff like that. And I remember one time leaving and feeling just like defeated, and sadly somebody was like, good luck, you know? And I was like,
thanks,
that was not helpful, you know? No. But yeah, learning to accept that that's what my kids are. And
my youngest was like that too. And one time we had a beautiful priest who said, he was talking about vocations, and my youngest would always make a dart for it. And he's like, if half the men in the church would be as open to and discerning running to the altar like Peter, like we would be in a good place. The church would be in a great place. Peter, you can't have my job yet. But he always wanted to be up there, wanted to, yeah. So, absolutely. But I liked it. Like, and the priest was funny about it. Like, and then when we were going Byzantine, Peter would run and walk down with them, and the priest would pick him up. And I apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll try. And he's like, no, let him come to me. I'm happy to do it. So he would pick Peter. Like, as soon as Divine Liturgy was ending, Peter knew he could run to Father. And he'd run, and Father Stephen would just pick him up, and he'd start kissing Jesus, start kissing the cross as Father walked down the aisle. And like, he's like, this is good. We need to encourage this. Like, And so it was beautiful where it wasn't like disruptive for liturgy. Like most of liturgy, we were in the icon room and he's kissing all the icons and everything else. But like the priest was very comfortable with it. And it's like, it's okay, you know? And it like he was 2, like at 10, that's not okay. But like at 2, okay. Like, I don't know. And I think there's something, I think that's part of why we felt drawn to the East was I feel like there was a comfort in the humanness. Like my experience, I felt like when my kids were younger in Roman parishes, it was sit, be quiet, be still, sit, be quiet, be still, kneel, sit, be quiet, be still. And then it was like Eucharist you're not a part of. Where in the Byzantine, at least my experience, I felt like it was more, they can come and go. Like there's coloring sheets in the back room that they can color icons, they can color different things. There's a icon room where they can pray, they can, leave, get a cup of water if you need to come. But Eucharist time, it's come, receive. And like they're a part of it. And it was like their highlight of divine liturgy. And then otherwise they can lay in their pew, and there was just something, I was like for us, I needed it, especially because I think Matt like was trying to make everyone control and behave. And there was just a freedom that came in it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I can let the kids be kids and we can pray and it's okay. It's okay if it doesn't look like that person or yeah.
Yeah. I've been to one Byzantine mass, or maybe more than that, but I noticed that as well, where people felt free to come in and come out. And I was like, this is human.
Yeah.
It's not so robotic. And there was a freedom in that, like you were saying. And I really enjoyed it. But we stuck with the Roman.
Yeah. And we're going more Roman now just because where we're living. And it's good. We enjoy it. Like it's like there's, yeah, like as John Paul II talks about, breathing out of both sets of lungs, like the East and the West, like we complement each other and we need both. And it's good. Like we can't demand uniformity where the church allows diversity. Like it's good that we have all the different types.
Yes, this idea that we have to be one type of spirituality is so off.
Yeah.
Because
and it's not human.
It's not human, but like even we look at who we are and we all have our own gifts and our own charisms. Why would that not also be expressed in the liturgy? That there are those of us who are drawn to the very traditional and those who are more charismatic and is it to say one is better than the other? I don't believe that. If it's respectful, then it is good, And I mean, yes, there are lines. You can't just be totally whatever you want. It can't be like Coke and chips, Like there are definitely our traditions and the things that we have to hold on to. But like, why can we not have a place where we can express and respect that others are different, and not be so rigid to my way is the right way,
And then I think it's okay that it changes as we change, So like when we got married, our music at Mass was very charismatic. And but it was so beautifully done. Like there were good musicians. So my thing is, I'm okay with, like personally, I prefer more of, like now my favorite is like the 7 a.m. Mass. I love it. It's like, I like that there's no music. I like that I go in. I like that I'm not awake yet. Father comes in. He, we have the readings. I normally wake up by his homily and I'm like, oh yeah, there's like 2 or 3 good nuggets. And then we're receiving, like before I know it, we're in Liturgy of the Eucharist and receiving. And then, so I feel like this send forth that I'm like, oh, I'm good, I'm ready. Like, and I like that. I like that it's like, I can fit 30 minutes into my day where, and I liked Mass at Franciscan. I did. Like our new Mass is an hour. But I loved it. We had this beautiful nun who's opera. She's like classically trained. She has an opera voice. And the days that she led, and it was like a simple Mass. It was like, oh, like this is, and I feel like I identify as having a beautiful Black sister opera voice, but my voice is horrible. So I'd always tell her, I'm like, yes, my internal voice is you. Like that I'm like, I feel like my soul gets it. I can't sing like her at all, but there's such passion and such, I don't know. And she hits these like opera things that are gorgeous. And I'm like, yes. And there's moods that I'm like that. I'm like, yes, I want that. But then we would have these FOPs, Festival of Praises, and the praise and worship was just so good. And like being in adoration and just worshiping and praising and And it's funny because people would make comments like, I didn't know you were like a fop type person. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to be a certain type person. And it's like, no, I just thought you were more Eastern Catholic, or I thought you were more this. And I'm like, I kind of like that no one knows what group that I belong in, because I belong in all of them. Like, I'm welcome in all of them, you know? And I think if you ever experience liturgy in another country, like going to Guatemala and having mass there, Matt talks about Africa. He's like, it was so long, but like beautiful and passionate and drums. And so it's like, there's a beauty in each of them. And there can be a way that you think's more right for you, but I really can't stand bad music. Like people that, like,
Yes.
that's the worst for me. I don't care if it's charismatic or folk or Latin. If it's bad, I can't do it. I'm like, you don't have the gift. Thank you for wanting to serve the church. Could you not? Because you're just not good.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. No offense. I'm not good either. Like, I know that the Lord is not calling me to do music ministry. I would be a great injustice to everyone if I did. We're better off with no music. But like bad, I really have a hard time with it.
I would agree with that totally. It's a distraction. It doesn't
It
lead
is.
you into worship in any way. You're left like, oh my gosh, turn it off.
I feel like a really good priest in mass like almost disappears in the liturgy, and that like liturgy is just what it is, and he's so beautifully persona Christi. Like, it's not about him and his personality and his schnick, or what's that word? I always say that word wrong. Stick.
His shtick.
Yeah. Like how some people are like, oh, so like, I like this mass because Father's whatever. And like, I love when someone just kind of disappears. So Sarah Kroger is always my example of it. Like, I love when I love being at conferences and speaking at conferences, and the music's amazing, but I often will opt for the priest friend who invites me to the hotel room. I'm like, yes, please, I'm going to come. But when Sarah leads music, she disappears in it. And she's just very humble, and Matt Maher does it as well. Like, there's certain musicians who do it and it's not about them, and they disappear, and you're just praying and you're worshiping. And there's a couple girls at Franciscan, and when I see that they're there, I'm like, yes. I don't even know their names, but I'm like, oh, I'm so glad they're leading worship today. And they just disappear, and it's not. And there's other people where it's like, there's some, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's about them. And it's like I don't know.
Yeah, they don't disappear. Like, yeah, there's a quality to holiness that is outside of your capacity. It's just a gift from the Holy Spirit, right? And I think that would be one of them, is the ability to lead people in worship and you not be the center, but Jesus really be the center. And I think that's one of the gifts.
And it's not the same. Like, different people can do it differently. And I think that's why I think you using the word holiness, I love, because I think it is. I think it's a sign of holiness, and it's not, oh, well, I like Father Mike Schmidt because it's this way, or I like Father Dave because it's that way, or Father Lewis. It's like, no, it's different in each of them. Like, no two are the same. And yeah, there's some, and I think you're right. I think it's something about holiness and something about like kind of overly relying on the Holy Spirit and just going where, like, I think there's less about them in it. And there's, I don't even know. I'm having a hard time articulating it. We were, Matt was speaking at the NAC, the National, what's it stand for? North American College Seminary, something, I don't know. It's in Rome. Beautiful holy priests or seminarians from all over the US. And they were all so different. And Matt gave a talk for them, and they were lovely. And someone asked about podcasts or media, what should we do? And Matt said he didn't encourage it. Like, you don't need to do it. And I was in the back. I'm like, no, please don't. Please don't. And there's like, I don't know, 100 seminarians. And of course, I'm the loud person in the back that can't. But I had that pounding, like the Holy Spirit were like, you gotta say something. You gotta say something. And I was like, no, please don't. Do not have a thing. We don't need you to have a podcast. We don't need you to have an Instagram account. We don't need you to be on stage at rallies. We need the sacraments from you. That's what you need to be giving us. We need confession. We need baptism. We need the Mass. I'm like, that's where you shine. I'm like, please don't try to be Father Mike. And I love Father Mike Schmitz is a good friend of ours, and I love him, and he's amazing. He never tried to be, I mean, he was being him, but like, he didn't try to be what his ministry's become, his main ministry is being a diocesan priest, but then he also does Bible in a year or catechism in a year or whatever, like these great videos, but he didn't try to do it. It just happened. And he's not trying to be someone. I'm like, he's just being him. And he is comfortable who he is, and he is amazing and beautiful, but he wasn't trying to be that. And I see, like, someone was telling Matt that he should have this guy on his show, and I don't even remember his name, but Matt starts showing me and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, oh, I don't like it. And he's like, why? And it was just, I was looking at his YouTube channel and his Instagram, and I was like, I don't like it. I feel like this guy's like, look at me, look at my thing. And I was like, I'm like, stay away from him. Like, we need to pray for him. And there was nothing wrong with anything that he said or did, but it was like, all about me.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, we're setting up some religious for failure by asking them to do that. And all the seminarians like applaud it. Like, they agreed with it and they're like, yes. And I was talking to the priest afterwards, and it's like, certain dioceses are telling priests, you need to have this, you need to, and he's like, our guys are struggling. Like, they're not all called to, and I'm like, no, focus on ministering there. Like, if your church wants some YouTube something, you tell them they can hire someone for it. You don't need to be doing it.
I would agree. One prayer time I had, it was profound, and it was on net, like in my years on staff. So this whole holiness and our gifts and how the Lord speaks to each one of us and calls us forth in different ways. And what he had sort of very clearly said to me is that we're all made beautifully and unique. And we lose sight of the fact that our souls are as unique as our faces. So I can recognize nose, eyes, ears on you. And so I can recognize spiritual gifts of like humility, piety, charity on someone else. But the way it's expressed in that person is completely different than the other, right?
Yeah.
As each of our faces are so unique. There are no two the same, neither are souls. So even the expression of like the gifts of the Holy Spirit will be that unique. So in our comparisons to one another, and I call them celebrity priests, like they have their gifts and that's the way they're to shine, but that doesn't make the other less, right?
Right. No,
in
not
the
at
way
all.
they shine in their virtues. And I don't think we're meant to be all up front. Like, why do we have cloisters?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to hide away. There are people called to be that, you know? And then there are the people called to be up front. And so it's like, where is the Lord bringing you in your life? And, you know, like,
And
you're called to be up front.
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, but it's in different ways. And it's
Yes.
like, I get really mad and defensive of people that will speak bad about someone else, about something. And I'm like, you don't know them. Like, and it's like, oh, they have this perfect marriage. I'm like, whoa, no, they don't. Well, they say, I'm like, no, they don't. They never say that they have a perfect marriage. You said that about them.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say, look at us, we have this perfect marriage. You said, oh, look at them, they have a perfect marriage. And you're the one setting them up for failure. Like, you're the one by saying that, or sometimes it's other people. It's like the company that does your podcast thing or whatever. And I just, yeah, it breaks my heart. And I'm like, please don't do that. Like, don't do that to them. Like, it's okay. They can just be them. They can just
be human.
Yeah, be human. And it's hard. It's hard to go back and forth and be like, and I meet people and right away we know if we can be friends or not. And Matt especially. Matt will meet people. And so we have these new friends in Florida and they're amazing and wonderful. And the guy was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I was telling someone I was hanging out with you and like, I never even knew of your podcast, you know? And Matt's like, thank you. I knew we could be friends right away because he was just a normal person to this guy. And same with the wife. Like, we were just normal people and our kids got along really well. So it was like the kids that brought us together and then our friendship. And then afterwards, like, oh, wow, I watched this thing. But it's like, it doesn't matter because that's not who you are. And when someone's like, oh my goodness, you're this. And you're like, oh, I can't be friends with you because I'm not. Like, the person that you see and you think is there, that's wonderful. And I'm glad that they've helped you. I just need you to know that's not the real thing. That's not the real person. And I love being here and so many people that I haven't seen in so long and beautiful women. And it's like talking and sharing. I'm like, oh yeah, there's the little 25-year-old Miriam, you know, or like little 18-year-old. And it's like, oh, I see that again. Like, I get it. Like, and that's part of why I love like our soul sisters, because I'm like, I'm me to all of y'all. And I love that. Like there's a freedom in it. And um, there's not a trying to be someone you're not. And like there's a freedom where it's like, you see me. You know, I'm just not eyes, nose, and a mouth, but my face, my soul. And I love that. I haven't heard that before. Like my soul is so uniquely different to your soul. The elements of it are the same. Like, yes, you have eyes, nose, and a mouth. And even on us, like they're both blue. They're both pale-ish, right?
Yes.
But they're still so different. Like we're so, so different. And I love that, the freedom in that. And the Lord, like by us not trying to be who he's creating, like it would be horrible if there was two Camerons in this world. Like it really would. Way too much, right? And it's like, but the beauty is I just need to be me and you just need to be you. And you're like the world's more beautiful by you being more Miriam. Like we need you being more you. And
That
going
is
through
holiness.
and that's holiness. Yeah. And there's experience you can go through living in a trailer. Like I could copy all the same things as you and not become more like you. But there are certain things of like detachment. So for me, it was like moving cross country. For you, it's moving into a trailer. But the Lord's revealing more and stripping away more, and we're both becoming more us. And there's a holiness that we're entering into, but we're not necessarily becoming more like each other.
That's right. Yeah. You're becoming more Cameron. I'm becoming more Miriam. And in that is the gift for our families. I struggle. I'm often like, come on, make me holy for their sake. This is taking too long. They're only children for so long, like I need to be further along so that I can lead them, the way I want them to be led. And then the whole comparison, right? How do we not compare? And the truth, I love what you're saying, is you don't know. We never know what's happening in someone else's life behind closed doors. We can have opinions, but the truth is nobody knows another's marriage. It's intimate. It's not yours to step into, and even children, all of it. Like my kids, just that I would look at other families like you and they'd all be sitting there and I'm like, they must have zappers on them.
Right? Because for your kids, to make your kids do that, they needed zappers. Yeah. Same with mine. And I'm like, oh yeah. And someone's like, your kids are all ADD. You should drug them. I'm like, oh my goodness, life would be so much better if I drugged them. But I'm not going to drug my kids. I was tempted for like a hot minute, but I was like overly drugged. So I'm like even more anti-drug. So it's like, they may get to an age, like my oldest is at an age where it's like, okay, if you feel like maybe if you took this medication, that would be okay. Like I'm not anti it anymore, but when he was little, I was very anti it. And I'm like, I'm probably more comfortable now. He doesn't need it. But if he gets to college and it's like, no, I need this, it's like, okay, go for it. But I feel like we too quickly jump to that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, well, if I had to make my kids behave like those women's kids behave, I would need to drug them. And I would like for me, I was raised in the 80s and 90s. So I was overly drugged. And so I was a zombie. So like and we have a good friend here who's like, these drugs are really helping. And she finds freedom in it and her kids. And I'm like, I'm open to that. But because of where I came from, I almost want to go the opposite extreme. And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe I should have been open to it. I prefer like diet. I'm very aware of diet, especially with my kids with more learning disabilities and the ADHD and all of that. I'm like, okay, was it gluten or dye? What'd you have? There's something there, So trying to be aware of that, but also like they have gifts and strengths. Like they will be like one of my sons will be a CEO or will run his own business. But oh my goodness, trying to get him to sit down and do like simple math is like pulling teeth. But it's like, I know you'll be successful as an adult, but how do I get you through childhood? And like, that's my prayer so often, Lord, let me not kill him before he makes it to adult mode. Like we're so close. We're so close. He's great now, but especially when he was little, I just, yeah. And if I was holier, it would be easier. And I'm trying, but yeah.
How do you not worry? Like I look at them and I'm like 10 years ahead. And I would love to be like, you're going to be great. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you don't get this, how will you be successful? I'm not always that way, but there are moments when I'm freaking out and I'm thinking, I'm failing.
Yeah, I remember Shane Bennett told Matt, a good friend of ours from Australia, that he's like, I'm so afraid I'm going to mess up my kids. He's like, of course you are. Who are you to deny your children needing Christ? You will mess up. You will mess them up. You just point them in the right direction and you make sure they know where to go to get healed. But yeah, you'll stuff them up. You'll break them.
That's
But
beautiful.
they need you. And I love that. And like, I look at my kids and there are things that I've messed up big time, but they're awesome people. Like they're amazing. And some of my biggest struggles, like some of the hardest times where I'm like, I feel like I'm abandoning them because I'm stuck in bed or in the hospital. And I'm like, I can't do anything for them. I can't be who they need me to be. And they like grow massively in compassion. Or like my daughters, as I was saying, don't worry, we'll help keep the house clean. We'll help keep the boys in check. We'll help dad. You know, and I'm like, you girls are awesome.
That's
like they're 12 and 14 and they're more prepared for marriage and family life than I was when I was 25. And I already had kids at that point. I'm like, I would put my 12-year-old in charge back then, like so much quicker than me, like even me now, you know? And I'm like, that's crazy. But they're beautiful and amazing. And some of my shortcomings have made them even more amazing and beautiful. And if they didn't have to go through those times, like I'd love to undo it, but I don't know.
But that's the glory of God, the glory of the cross, right?
Yeah.
In the death you rise.
We all have different crosses. Father Dave, a friend of mine that's the president at Franciscan, said his mom had MS. And I talked to him because I was really concerned. I'm like, gosh, what is this doing to my kids? Like, I'm not being the mom that, because I see myself as really crushing it in their baby years. And I was like, I was a good mom. I did the activities. I did the things. And then now I'm getting, like, I was just having teenagers at this point in time. And I'm like, I've fallen apart. Like, I can't walk down the stairs certain days, like let alone be there for them and do everything. And he's like, you know, it's funny. We didn't think about that. Like that wasn't our identity wasn't having a sick mom. It was mom being mom, but like they were all boys. And he's like, we all knew how to cook. We all knew how to do laundry. And he's like, so we get, you know, seminarians. I'm like, how do you not know how to do this? He's like, all of us were set up for success because mom couldn't do it. So we did it. And he's an amazing, beautiful man, holy man. But that's part of his story. Had his mom not have had MS, he wouldn't be who he is today.
Wow.
And the humility of that too. He's like, they went to see the Holy Father, maybe Pope Benedict, maybe John Paul II, I forget, some Pope. And she was having a good day the day before they saw the Pope, and she was walking and she was okay. And the day they actually saw her, she had a bad day and was in a wheelchair. And like that, oh, I wish I could have been the opposite. Like I wish, and it's like, no, but that's the beauty of it. And yes, it's humbling. And yes, there's a sacrifice and a suffering that comes with it. But she said he knows that the gift of his priesthood and the ministry that he does is because of his mom and her suffering. And she's so good at offering it up, you know?
It's beautiful.
So it's like, he almost talks about it as the gift of his mom's MS, you know, which is really beautiful. And it's like, okay, that's it. Like that's holiness, right?
Absolutely. Holy in all situations, like complete. When no one's looking, when everybody's looking, you're the same person. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Praise you, Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're great.
That was perfect.